The odyssey of time is the most interesting of all journeys. In fact, it is not just interesting, it's inspiring, enlightening, and at times uplifting as well. We all carry with us stories of our individual journeys spanning the warp and weft of our respective lives. However, it is the tale of a collective entity, a community, a society, a nation that could fire our imagination, make us wonderstruck, give us a sense of history, and in the process, enrich our approach to time itself. Wholes are, after all, always more significant than the individual parts that make them up. Talking of journeys, well, best are those that take us back in time, that introduce us to patterns and attitudes of a bygone era. The beautiful valley of Kashmir offers ample scope to get lost not just in its stupendous natural charms, but also in a range of such man-crafted wonders that could find, some way or the other, their explanation in the timeless presence of nature. One such monumental entity obtains in its grand old world repose along the banks of river Jhelum in Srinagar city. This is the Maharaj Gunj locality of old Srinagar city, celebrating the heyday of Dogra royalty in its name and zenith. Maharaj Gunj boasts a socio-cultural identity rooted in the essence of Kashmir. The quaint charm of this marketplace may be like the brisk pace of business that it was used to once. However, there is enough evidence, primarily in the shape of first-hand accounts, to suggest that Maharaj Gunj was the epicenter of all business activity in Srinagar city.
What were the routes? Initially it was Leh Turtuk, number one route. Leh Panamik, the second route, and third one is Leh Chishul. This is the route that has been used by the scholars, by all those who had trading, who were actively involved in the trading activities. They have used this type of route. From Kashmir to Kargil to Leh, Sakti to Tangse to Chishul to Phobrang and the Pangang Lake. That comes in between. That is absolutely in Chishul, between Neoma and Chishul. These were fundamentally the routes that had been used. Even in Chishul itself, you will find big rocks like hills, like small mountains, where you will find the inscriptions of the traders and the scholars who have used these routes for the purpose of this transmission of ideas, transmission of commodities from one region to another. You will find the Hindi, the Arabic, the Persian that have been engraved on the stones and the big rocks. And finally, from that part, reaching all these routes I had referred to that had been used by almost traders and scholars and everybody, finally coming down to reach to Maharajganj. Okay? Why Maharajganj? Because this has been the only, जिसे हम कहते हैं कि ये सराय type, कि you by through waters and by the roads, every caravan will by this way, that way would reach Maharajganj, and exchange of goods, exchange of ideas, and exchange of commodities that took place especially in Maharajganj itself.
Traders of this market would maintain very strong business links with manufacturers and traders from across India. Actually, a variety of goods dispatched from different parts of India to Kashmir through road transport would first reach Lal Chowk. From Lal Chowk, the goods would be transported to Maharaj Gunj through Jhelum, the lifeline of Kashmir. After being stocked up in big godowns at Maharaj Gunj, the goods would be transported to the towns of North and South Kashmir As per the supply order received from there, the actual process of transportation would start from these ghats, once bustling with activity, but now in a nondescript state.
Yos ये महाराज गंज मंडी छे गमत 1756 मज एक्चुअली कायम हज ये आसान गैर मुस्लिम हज यत महाराज गंज किस अंद महाराजा हरि सिंगन बनोमुत ये तजारती मंडी अत आसान गैर मुस्लिम जन ब्रोट काल पे लाहौर या मुल्तान या रावलपिंडी पे आमत योर चूँकि तिमन दोन पार्टीशन गोमुत कहें तकसीम गोमुत कहें शहर श्रीनगर गोनिश मंडी ये पे माल गसान सप्लाई असे
सारियान मज गसान इस्लामाबाद गसान बारामूला गसान रावलपिंडी गसान वारियान जायन गसान मगर तिमन दोहन जरिए अत दरियावी गसान माल नावन मज गसान माल लद्दाख गसान माल गुरन कत खचर तिमन मज बरान ये बड़ बार मंडी ये सरसी माल ये पे
इस्लामाबाद यजब्योर और नावन मज गसान मे पान तम खरीदार मे तक यजबारिक तम नाव करान बडशाह सबस नश थवान डिंग बोड़ बार तथ मज खालान इस्लामाबाद त यजबोर त तमाम जायन खालान ऊटी करदा ये पे दिवान पे गाड़ ये गो बरमुत नावन मज तथ पे दिवान पे गुरन पे.
Rivers have been a highly dependable means of transport since times immemorial, and bridges straddling them replicate their essential character, ensuring proximity and convergence among people in a special way. Standing here on the old Zanakadal Bridge, a key landmark of Maharaj Gunj, one can effortlessly look around to imbibe a fair sense of traditional charm. This bridge was gifted in a sense by Sultan Zainul Abidin to his physician, Shri Bhatt, who cured him of a life-threatening disease. As the Sultan was convalescing, he asked his physician what gift he should be bestowed with. Shri Bhatt replied that the gift should be as precious as life itself. After which the king got this bridge built. Zanakadal has truly been the lifeline of Maharaj Gunj in particular and Srinagar city in general. It's not just the feel of traditional charm that this bridge offers. You get a distinct sense of spiritual charm as well. Quite in the vicinity of Zanakadal, on the banks of river Jhelum, lies the shrine of the pioneer of Islam in Kashmir, Hazrat Mir Sayyid Ali Hamdani.
With the coming of Hazrat Amir Kabir Mir Sayyid Ali Hamdani to Kashmir, the type of relations, both commercial as well as intellectual, they have been highly cemented afterwards, almost cemented type of relations. He did not came here only for the consolidation and propagation of religion of Islam, and had an everlasting contribution in the process of the conversions that took place in the valley of Jammu Kashmir those days, especially in Kashmir, but was instrumental in the introduction of some of the unique type of extraordinary these what we call it the trading commodities. For example, shawls and gabda, gabbas, namdas, paper mashi, so on and so forth. It is believed that he had not come alone to Kashmir, but with some good number of disciples who had spread to various parts of the valley region, and they were not only involved in the propagation of the religion of Islam, but were of course involved in the arts and crafts that were available those days in Iran, in Central Asia. Those arts and crafts were introduced in Kashmir as well.
Very close to this grand shrine is the temple of Kali Mata. On the far side of Maharaj Gunj, at a much higher physical level, lies the shrine of Hazrat Sheikh Hamza Maktoum, popularly known as Sultanul Arifin, the king of saints. About 2 kilometers from Maharaj Gunj lies the oldest and most expansive of landmarks in Old City Srinagar, Jamia Masjid. Supported by 370 wooden pillars, the mosque was built in 1400 AD by Sultan Sikandar. The mosque has a capacity to accommodate 100,000 people.
ये सुल्तान जैनुल आबिदीन बादशाह साहब, ये मीर सईद अली हमदानी आस्तान शरीफ खानकाह मौला, योर अकि साइड जामिया मस्जिद। ये महाराजगंजस मज सारी चीज़ हस, ये गुरुद्वारा ते मंदिर ते क्रिश्चन गिरजाघर ते और मुसलमान हज मस्जिद ते। चूँकि ये मिलसार सारनी हुंद, यथ इलाकस मज रोजान सारी कम्युनिटी, यथ मज हिंदू ते रोजान, मुसलमान ते, बट ते, सिख ते रोजान। ये भेदभाव कुन किस्मुक, मगर यो अगर हुकूमत ये कुन तवज्जो दी है, मुमकिन यह कर तरक्की।
The plural character of Kashmiri society has been celebrated in numerous ways. Social relationships, cultural bondings, business ties, and even political affinities in Kashmir carry the essence of a composite milieu.
The culture, civilizational glory of our region, especially Kashmir, it was almost confined before 14th century. Why? Because of the predominance of many sects and many beliefs and many religions and all that. Okay, mostly Shivite philosophy had influenced to a greater extent our great scholars even for a greater period of time. Sometimes it is very difficult to distinguish between Lal Ded and Sheikhul Alam. Very difficult by virtue of the influences they had. Okay, but once this Iranian influence came in, why? By virtue of the coming of Hazrat Amir Kabir Mir Sayyid Ali Hamdani to Kashmir with his almost 700 disciples, that both material and non-material culture of Kashmir, that went a radical change.
Maharaj Gunj, and in particular the tidings of its yore, speak eloquently about the richness of this place as a melting pot of different socio-cultural and socio-economic patterns, and of course the unmistakable influence of politics attending it. On many of these shops would be discussed finer elements of the warp and weft of different political influences that attended Kashmir at different points in time. Such political discourse would, however, seldom affect the flow of commercial activity and in fact boost it by creating newer efficiencies of interest.
All the activities, whether it was economic activities, as you know it from trade caravans from Central Asia would come over there, all the social, economic and the religious and the political activities where focus is downtown. Because downtown is the history of resistance, downtown the history of those culture, downtown is the history, and downtown, that means Shahri Khas, is the history of those sentiments, that cultural values. Everything was there in downtown. Actually this was Jama Masjid, this was Khanakah Mola, this was Mujahid Manzil. These were the icons of actually your culture, not only your political history, no, not only of the resistance. These were the icons and the centers of your social activities, the religious activities, the political activities, all sort of activities of the human activities. It was downtown, it was those centers.
Maharaj Gunj has in effect been much more than a marketplace. It's not a market that ever existed in a vacuum. Unlike a typical marketplace where all dealings are purely determined by hardcore business considerations, Maharaj Gunj has had a soft culture of easy credit, handsome rebates, free gifts, and above all a winsome disposition on the part of both sellers and buyers.
ये मार्केट ऐसी है कि जहाँ से लोग उधार माल लेते थे, जो आज के ज़माने में बैंक आपसे 10 शहातें लेके माल डालता है, यहाँ से लाखों करोड़ों रुपए का माल पूरी की पूरी माली को वैली को फीड होता था। इट वाज ए पैरेलल बैंक जस्ट लाइक J&K बैंक इन द वैली। लेकिन अब हमारी बदकिस्मती ये है कि यहाँ कोई आने को तैयार नहीं है, क्योंकि आने का रास्ता नहीं है, और बाज़ार की हालत भी वो खस्ता है कि यहाँ कोई काम करने को तैयार नहीं है। हम सन 1935 में हमारे बुज़ुर्ग यहाँ पे आए थे रोज़गार की तलाश में, और जबकि उनको बाकी जगहों में रोज़गार में इतनी सहूलत नहीं थी जो उनको यहाँ मिली थी। आज हालात वो है कि हम यहाँ से अपने बच्चों को बाहर भेज रहे हैं ताकि वहाँ रोज़गार कमाएं। इस मार्केट से हमें कोई उम्मीद नहीं है।
The unwholesome air of snobbery that attends commercial activity in modern-day shopping malls was quite unheard of in a marketplace like Maharaj Gunj. Customers would cherish the personalized attention showered on them, while the dealers would grow richer by more goodwill than money. Such approach to business was actually a direct result of the culture of tolerance, peaceful coexistence, and mutual respect, a defining hallmark of Kashmiri society for centuries together. At another level, of course, the inspiringly healthy business atmosphere had its own role in enriching Kashmir socially, culturally, and economically. Certain influences are tremendously imposing, not just in physical terms, but also, and more importantly, in terms of their essence and representative character. This monument, popularly known as Badshah's Tomb, is dedicated to the mother of Sultan Zainul Abidin Badshah, the most generous and humane Muslim ruler Kashmir has ever known. This is her final resting place. Its overarching influence has attended the routine of life both in and around Maharaj Gunj. The tomb is a fine example of architecture. It's different because it's composed of bricks as compared to the most other Shahmiri structures, which are wooden. Viewing this relationship between Badshah's tomb and Maharaj Gunj from a different prism, however, one might concur that both share a common fate now. Both are in neglect. The fact is undeniable. The present-day Maharaj Gunj is a pale shadow of what it used to be during the good old days.
गवर्नमेंट गवर्नमेंट आए तम दुन ये तवज्जो महाराजगंज मंडी कुन कह हालांकि तवारीखी हैसियत वनकन तथ महाराजगंजस ये बड़वार मंडी बहरहाल ये बने बाकी मंडी बने।
कुछ हालात ऐसे हो गए और कुछ हुकूमतें ऐसी आई कि इस मार्केट को टोटली नज़रअंदाज किया गया, और आज इसका हशर यह है कि यहाँ का मार्केट एक पुराने ज़माने के ज़माने की मार्केट के बराबर लगता है। अगर आप किसी रिमोट एरिया में भी जाएंगे, इससे बेहतर आपको बाज़ार और मार्केट नज़र आएगी। यहाँ की बिल्डिंगें जो हैं खस्ता हालत में हैं, गिरने को तैयार हैं, और कोई हुकूमत की उस पर निगाह नहीं है।
यह हमेशा इलाके सियासत शिकार गए हमेशा नज़रअंदाज कर, चूँकि वनकस मामूली तजारत चलान, तथा वजह कि यह फलान फलान तम वनकस मगर ये ट्रांसपोर्ट फैसिलिटी कहें। अगर जन वो अमरा किल पे नान करनाख कुन गाड़ी, अमरा किल ग पूंचराच वरी गाड़ी, मगर ये महाराजगंज पे हेकान गाड़ी बटमालिन गि न लाल चौक हेकान गाड़ी गि, चूँकि अगर महाराजगंज ट्रांसपोर्ट सर्विस आ मुमकिन यह गई बे बहाल सो 1970 ब्रोट।
The requirements which a trade needs, exchange of goods and services, those are large spaces, unloading the things, जो गाड़ियाँ रहेंगे वहाँ, then the communications, telephonic, then the banking systems, जो facilities। पहले ज़माने में exchange of goods and goods होते थे, चांदी यहाँ से सोना वहाँ से देते हैं, एक चीज़ यहाँ से दूसरी चीज़ बार्टर चल रहा था। अब people prefer now in terms of currencies, तो banking system ज़रूरी है, लार्ज ये वेयर हाउस ज़रूरी है जहाँ रखेंगे, कोल्ड स्टोर ज़रूरत, इसके लिए लार्ज स्पेस ज़रूरत है। इसलिए ये महाराजगंज नहीं, अब कोई दूसरी जगह प्रेफर हो जाएगी। मे बी महाराजगंज विल बी लोकली एक रिटेल सेंटर होगा ट्रेड का, not a major trading center, because it was earlier between the large country, it was a destination point, it was not a trade market, it was a simple market of exchange of goods and services। अब तो between countries होगा, तो उस बिटवीन कंट्रीज़ में वो आपको ऑल फैसिलिटीज़ होनी चाहिए जो मॉडर्न ट्रेड रेगुलेट करने के लिए ज़रूरी है।
The last decade or so in particular has relegated Maharaj Gunj to an archival state, with scores of sleek, modern-day shopping malls coming up in Srinagar city to a rapid pace. Very few feel like subscribing to the jaded character of Maharaj Gunj. Pretty little has actually been done to revive the area and restore its lost glory. Even the very basic facilities like roads and apursuant facilities have not been taken care of. Fallout, a sharp downswing in commercial activities, as also a decline in living standard of the local populace. The state of this health facility, dating back to the times of Maharaja Hari Singh, is yet another indicator of how much apathy Maharaj Gunj has suffered. Shri Ram Temple in Maharaj Gunj is one more glaring example of neglect suffered by the area as a whole. Shortcomings notwithstanding, Maharaj Gunj attends life in a manner all its own. With a distinct laid-back feel, it tends to discover freshness in an old script of living. A few key constants help it through in its subconscious endeavor, like the traditional harissa cellar, quality of whose harissa has always been second to none in the whole of Kashmir. Harissa happens to be a non-veg breakfast delicacy relished in particular during the harsh winters of Kashmir.
This morning has been the most refreshing morning for me since this winter has come. अभी एक महीना हो गया जब से हम सर्दियाँ यहाँ पर फील कर रहे हैं, लेकिन ये सुबह कुछ खास है. I am feeling too refreshed, I am feeling too energetic and I am feeling too happy. शायद कश्मीरियों के दिल का जो रास्ता है वो खाने से ही जाता है. इनफैक्ट कहीं पर भी आप जाओ तो लोग खाने की तरफ पहले ध्यान देते हैं. आज सुबह सुबह शहर खास में के एक मोहल्ले में आके मैंने हरीसा खाया और मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है कि ये विंटर का मौसम जल्दी आना चाहिए था. ये शायद थोड़ा लेट आया है. ऐसे तो हरीसा घर में भी खाते हैं, वहाँ पर भी मज़ा आता है, लेकिन यहाँ पर जहाँ पर ये बनता है यहाँ पर खा के कुछ खास लग रहा है. मुझे लग रहा है शायद मैं कल शाम तक कुछ और ना खाऊं, क्योंकि इस हरीसे का टेस्ट इतना ज़्यादा अच्छा और इतना ज़्यादा रिफ्रेशिंग है. यहाँ पर देखा बनता कैसे है वो सबसे ज़्यादा दिलचस्प था. यहाँ पर मटकियाँ हैं जो तंदूर से रिजेंबल करती हैं, लेकिन तंदूर है नहीं. 3 मटकियाँ मैंने देखी. एक मटकी में पिसा हुआ जो हरीसा हम जिसको बोलते हैं, दूसरी मटकी में मीट था जो उसके ऊपर डाला जाता है, प्रोबेबली जो हम गार्निश बोलते हैं वेस्टर्न डिश के लिए, वो किया गया थोड़े से मीट के टुकड़ों के साथ और एक पीस कबाब के साथ, और फिर ऊपर से तड़का लगाया गया. और वो तड़का भी कुछ स्पेशल वे में लगाया जाता है. पहले एक जलती हुई स्टोव पे एक चमचे में, बड़े से चमचे में तेल रखा जाता है और उसके बाद वो तेल इसके ऊपर डाला जाता है. सो इट वॉज टू गुड टू सी एंड इट वॉज टू गुड टू ईट.
Standing atop the new Zanakadal bridge, one cannot help but feel the increased distance between Maharaj Gunj and the area across. At one level, it appears that Maharaj Gunj has been left behind in the race against time. However, at another level, the area strikes as being smugly positioned in a grand state of traditional contentment. Pragmatically, of course, Maharaj Gunj calls for both preservation and revival.